Hi, I'm Mr. Demedio.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Adamson.
Hi, I'm Hannah Armstrong.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Davis.
Hello, I'm Mr. Smith.
This is Chapter 1 of Rising Water by Marc Aronson.
Dr. Andrew Allen Johnson, an American anthropologist who lived in northern Thailand for many years, has described the area near the Tham Luang cave system as a beautiful mountain valley with sharp-sided cliffs, the hills covered with green, dense jungle. And then comes the cave system, which is enthralling. Its entrance is broad, like a cathedral door, and during the rainy season, the humidity pours out of it like steam. It looks like the gateway to another world. In some senses, it is. Filled with inviting chambers, challenging tight corners, and branching paths, the caves are a popular destination for adventurous explorers, like the members of the Mupa youth soccer team. The Mupa are wild boars, were members of a soccer club whose players ranged in age from 11 to 19. 12 players and their fit, outgoing, and good-humored assistant teacher coach, 25-year-old Eck, has decided to cap off a day of practice by scrambling through the linked giant caverns and twisting tight and craggy passageways of the 6.4-mile-long cave system. Noparat Kantawang, the team's creator and head coach, started the group in 2015 as a free activity to give young people, especially those facing difficult lives, a chance to enjoy themselves and to improve their skills. When about 70 players across a wide range of ages joined up, Coach Kantawang divided the players into 4 age groups, though the best players could play up into the next squad. The players in the cave cut across the age groups. The wild boars practiced hard, sent some graduates on to major Thai soccer teams, and fared surprisingly well in regional tournaments, earning second place in one recent contest and taking home the championship in another. But their bonds went beyond sports. Eck created a system where an athlete's playtime was linked to how he was doing in school. Excitement about sports led to better study habits, and better grades guaranteed more chances to excel at sports. The sports school link was only part of what the team offered. Out of 70 wild boars, at least 20, including 3 lost in the cave and Eck himself, were not Thai. Their place in the country was fragile. As Coach Kantawang explained, all of the kids who joined the team, they all wish that they would be professional soccer players, but they would not be able to do so if they don't have nationalities. Eck and the other stateless players were among the 400,000 to possibly as many as 3 million people in Thailand, who are similar to what are called undocumented immigrants in the United States, with an added level of peril. They are not Thai, but if they are missing any birth information from their home country, they are also no longer citizens of the lands in which they are born. Stateless people can live in Thailand but do not have the legal papers that would allow them to study, travel, and work throughout the country, eventually get married or leave Thailand and return. As the coach said, they have no nationality at all. The team is a kind of home, a place to be together, bond, share, and learn away from the impossible pressure of being a person with a country.
As Eek tells it, they had been thinking about exploring the caves for a while, ever since they had gone on a team-building bike trip together. Hey, he remembered someone saying, let's go to Tham Luang on the next trip. Eek and three of the other players had already visited the cave several times, but they only made the others eager to get their chance. The players had visited the cave included Titan, who was 11 and the youngest member of the team. Titan is the Thai pronunciation of the English word. Many Thai people were given nicknames at birth, which may often be Thai pronunciations of English words, and use those nicknames all the time except on the most formal, official occasions when they use their given first names. Though Titan was born in Thailand, his grandmother was not. He was able to visit relatives on both sides of the Thai border whenever he liked. But when she visits him, she too is stateless. Usually a lively, happy person with a high-pitched voice, Titan had been playing soccer for 5 years and liked to be a forward or a striker. Marc was 12 in 7th grade and known for rooting for Real Madrid and paying close attention to games in the Spanish elite La Liga. Like Eek, Adol, and Nick, and T, Marc was born in Burma, also known as Myanmar, and was stateless in Thailand. Burma was renamed Myanmar by its government when it was run by its military. Some who are critical of the former military rulers continue to use the older name. Marc was intent on his studies as on his game.
At 13, Mick, a 7th grader, was one of the younger players, but he was agile and big for his age and enjoyed being a midfielder. Dom was also 13 and in 7th grade. He was known for inspiring other players, had been named team captain, and had been scouted by adult Thai teams. His girlfriend, 13-year-old Nuchanan Ramkiao, said he was actually scared of the dark, but for that very reason liked the challenge of entering caves in order to be brave and to overcome his fears.
Later, as the story of the lost team spread over Thai media, pictures of Dom and Marc attracted special attention. Social networks buzzed with comments on how handsome they were. Pong was 13 in 7th grade, played left wing, and was an avid sports fan, whether playing soccer or watching the World Cup, which was taking place just as the team entered the cave. He was rooting for England.
14-year-old Adol Samon, whose name was sometimes shortened to Dul, was in 8th grade. He played left defender and was known for his skill with languages, as he spoke Thai, Burmese, Chinese, Wa, and English. In Chinese class, he sometimes used the name Chen Ning. Born in Burma, Adol is ethnically Wa and was stateless within Thailand. Historically, the Wa lived high on the hills across China and Burma. Fiercely independent, they have an area within Burma they consider their own state and control their own army. This has led to a series of clashes and temporary peace treaties with the Burmese government. Unlike the overwhelming majority of Thai people, the Wa are not Buddhist, are being visited by both Buddhist and Christian missionaries. Adol, for example, was Christian. Turn was 14 in 8th grade and was relatively new to the team. He was the kind of person who took pride in being able to take care of himself. At 14, Bu was in 8th grade and was the team's main goalie. Note was also 14 and in 8th grade. He rooted for a local team, Chiang Rai United, and played both goalie and midfielder. 15-year-old Nick was a close friend of Bu's and in 9th grade. He was not actually on the team yet, but came to the practice and followed on to the cave. T was 16 in 10th grade, a defender, and had discussed the trip with his girlfriend before the team went into the cave. T was ethnically Thai Yai, born in Burma. He too was stateless in Thailand.
Finally, Knight, who turned 17 the day the team entered the cave, was in 9th grade and was a right winger. Some Thai people who use the nickname Knight prefer to see it as Knight, which of course is possible since the English words sound the same.
The team planned out the day carefully. First, starting at 10 in the morning, they played a warm-up game about 2 miles from the caves. After they finished the match, they biked over to the cave, since everyone was curious. The caves, which are an international as well as local attraction in the dry season, beckoned, but the team members were all watching the clock. One player needed to be back by 5 o'clock to meet his tutor. Knight's parents had planned a birthday party for him, complete with SpongeBob cakes. The whole team had been invited to come, and no one wanted to disappoint his parents by being late. Once they reached the cave, they would have about 4 hours to explore its inviting caverns. Around noon, the team biked over to Tam Luang, where their backpacks and had lunch and snacks. The interlinked corridors of the cave system are dry, sometimes. The sequence of chambers and narrow passages weaves its way inside limestone hills that were once the bottom of an ancient seabed. Created through the endless accumulation, combination, and crushing of seashells, limestone resembles hardened sponges.
Cut.
Okay. The full name of the cave system is Tam Luang Nan No, the royal cave of the reclining woman, and there's a story behind the name. This wedge of the country is so close to Burma and Laos that it is called the Golden Triangle. The term is not meant as a compliment. The loose borders were exploited for many years by drug smugglers, bringing first opium and later methamphetamine from creators to markets. The Thai government helped to shut down the opium traffic, but the drug smuggling is so well known in the area that there is a museum called the Hall of Opium that seeks to entice curious tourists. And the easy pathways from one nation to another are one reason why there are many stateless people in the area. A family may bring a child across the border to Thailand to give him or her a better start in life, even though the child will face the challenge of not having Thai residency papers. The overlapping histories of peoples in the region can also be seen in the stories of the cave. According to the legend, many years ago, a princess from Burma fell in love with a man who was not royal, and she became pregnant. Her parents were furious, and she fled from them into the cave. When her father's soldiers followed her, she took her own life. Her body is said to have formed the mountains, and the cave is the passage in, haunted by wounded, angry spirits. The spirits look like a cross between ogres and giants. They are frightening, but also in pain, and capable of being healed. A modern shrine to the spirit of the princess stands at the cave mouth. As Dr. Johnson explains, a common view in Thailand is that you don't need to believe in spirits, but you also don't want to offend them. There is a good reason to treat the caves with respect. Interlaced with countless crevices and tiny tunnels, the limestone walls of the cave are extremely porous. For 4 months of the year, storm systems begin gathering moisture over the Indian Ocean and sweep across Thailand. These monsoons send black clouds scudding across the sky and pour down sheets of driving rain. The falling water cascades through the rocks, creating flash floods that inundate the cave. Caverns instantly become lakes. Tight passageways fill floor to ceiling with water, and the slope of the ground creates a current flowing from deep in the cave system out toward its mouth. That enticing gateway now gushes water. Looking, the Belgian diver Ben Raymonants has said, like white water churning on the Colorado River. A sign warns no one to enter during the rainy season from July to November. But since it was still June and the previous year the rains did not begin until mid-July, the team thought they were safe. A guide to the caves describes them as being at the bottom of a magnificent semicircle of cliffs filled with lush evergreen forests. The wide opening Dr. Johnson described invites explorers to enter, and for about a half mile, 1 kilometer, there is an easy walk, part of which is paved with cement. From there, visitors navigate through boulders until the passage narrows down to a space some 6.5 feet or 2 meters wide and about 10 feet, 3 meters high. Past the opening chamber, the caverns let in no light and there are no pathways. Explorers need to wedge themselves between jagged rocks, finding pathways up, down, into, and out of whatever space they can manage to see. Those who make it through soon reach even tighter tunnels in which they need to crawl to reach the next high, open chamber. From the easy entry to the challenging crevices, the caves drew Eck and the boys even farther into their depths.
Guided by their flashlights, the team navigated through the caves for about 3 hours until they reached the spot they called the labyrinthine groundwater city. The chamber was filled with water, and they had to decide, keep going or turn back. Most could swim well, and even those who were beginners were willing to try. They'd all be cold and wet for a bit, but the depths of the cave were calling. After all, in the dry season, even school groups came to the caves and managed to make their way through them. T, one of the older members of the team, jumped in across the water to test how deep it was and said it was fine all the way across. Eck followed and agreed, but it was getting late. They had better turn around, T warned, and they began walking back. Marching into the wide-mouthed dry cave is one thing. Scrambling against time in a dark cave filling with water is another. Twake Naming, who had explored the cave with his friends, but whose parents made him come home after the game, explained that when you're in the cave, you don't hear the rain. And when the rain really hit and the water started flowing, they must have been too far inside. The path ahead is split into 2 branches, and they were not sure where to go back. Bu noticed the water rising. Are we lost? Someone asked. Some of the boys were starting to get scared that they might be lost, trapped in the cave. scared that they would arrive home late and their parents would be angry. They had all made sure not to tell the adults they'd planned to explore the cave after the game. Eck, who is genial and gracious, reassured the team that there's one way back, the way we came from. He decided to go ahead and into the flow of the water with 3 of the boys, T, Knight, and Adul. The water was so high now that he would have to dive to see if they could swim to the next chamber. But how would the other 3 know where he was? Eck had a rope and left one end with the group waiting for him. If he yanked twice, that would mean he was in trouble, and they must pull him back. If he sent no signal, he had found a passage, and they should follow. Eck plunged into the water, but soon he began running out of breath. 1 tug, 2. Knight pulled him out. They could not dive across the water and needed to find another escape route. One possibility was to dig out a channel and redirect the water that was blocking them. That way they could see the path back. Everyone grabbed stones and started chipping at the rocks. It was nearing 5 p.m. Their parents would be angry, would be worried, and the cave was very dark. Scraping the limestone, they worked to divert the water, but after what felt like an hour, they realized they were getting nowhere. The water was rising. T wondered if they should stop trying to get out and instead look for a safe place to rest. Eck, calm as ever, agreed with T that the rising water might be a tide, which would ebb again if they waited it out. Instead of fighting the moment, they needed to find a place to regroup, rest, and wait. Retreating back into the cave, they found sand mounds that would keep them dry, and water dripping from the walls that was clean enough to drink. Eck and the team were lost in a pitch-black cave with no way to reach the outside world, no food, and rising water. But for the moment, they were safe.
Saturday night, June 23rd, outside the cave. 5 o'clock came and went. None of the boys or the coach returned for lessons, for the party, and their parents began to worry. Mick's girlfriend kept texting him, desperately trying to find out where they were. One wild boar, 13-year-old Songpol Kangathawang, had come home after the practice. He didn't have a bike, so he couldn't join his friends in the adventure. By 9 that night, his uncle, the team's head coach, called. "Do you know where Eck is?" he asked. "They went to the cave," Songpol answered. Coach Kangathawang rushed to the cave, as did Sungwat Kangkol, a local rescue worker, and found the team's bikes carefully parked with cleats neatly lined up beside each one. The boys had planned the trip and had entered the cave, but where were they? How long could they last? And now the torrential rains were pouring down and the cave was filling up with even more water. Kamungkol contacted other rescuers who had dive equipment, but they could not squeeze their gas canisters into the tight caverns. "Eck, Eck, Eck," Coach Kangathawang screamed into the cave. His body went completely cold. The boys and Eck were gone. Families, local police, friends rushed to the cave, calling for their lost sons. Their voices echoed and then faded into silence.